Tom Pelissero is going to be joining us right now from.
Looks great.
Let's just pop him up.
Yeah, let's just put him on.
Hey, what's up, Tom? Oh. Look at you, man. So clearly you must have checked the bag because there's no way the hair gel could have gotten through TSA. Right? I mean, there's no way. It's definitely more than 4 ounces, Tom. You know?
Check the bag. Got the coconut oil, just enough.
Look at that.
No explosions, which is huge because let me tell you, I've had a coconut oil explode in my suitcase before. That stuff does not come out of anything. So we made it safely. All is well.
Okay, and I see the pocket squares working. What did you say was going on the other day, Chris?
So last night I was watching some of the media night.
Yeah.
Tom, a lot of ankle last night. A lot of ankle showing.
You went sockless on media night? Really?
I went sockless. It's hot down here. It's going to be pushing up towards 80 degrees. Ian and I had a little adventure around the stadium because we were the first ones to arrive, and there was a tad bit of confusion about what gates we were and weren't allowed to go in. So we were huffing it quite a ways around the stadium, and I was thankful to have a little breeze down there at the bottom.
Drew breeze.
Hey now,
little breeze. Okay. So again, I wasn't watching. There's too much going on in the household. Capri pants? Like what? I don't understand. Like why would there be too much?
Normal pants. They're normal pants. As you guys know,
Tom's like a 32-24.
It's a higher inseam. 31-30. Thank you very much. We're holding on to that 31 as long as we can. But then with no socks and then the low shoes, it gives you a little view there.
By the way, another band a cover band. Hey, come and see Inseam Slander. Come on out. Inseam Slander.
So it was more like capri pants then, right?
That's what this guy, I mean, does he not listen?
My battery went dead a second ago.
Oh, my God. What is happening around here? Back on the Rich Eisen Show Radio Network. I'm sitting at the Rich Eisen Show desk, furnished by Grainger with supplies and solutions for every industry. Grainger is the right product for you. Call, click Grainger.com or just stop by. Tom Pelissero is here.
Tommy, let's go.
What's up, boys? How we doing?
It's been a wild day, Tom. Can't lie.
Yeah.
I got beats, too.
So let's just jump right into it, Tom. Walk me through how Myles Garrett wound up posting a basic farewell letter to the city of Cleveland.
This had been going on, Rich, for 3 or 4 weeks since the Browns season ended. They had been, Myles Garrett and his agent had been trying to quietly make clear to the Browns that he wanted a fresh start elsewhere. Obviously, the Browns are at a different point right now where they still have said publicly that they are not trading Myles Garrett. You know, in the Browns' mind, what they would like to do is redo Myles Garrett's contract, which has 2 years and about $45 million left, make him the highest paid defensive player, one of the highest paid players in football, in the coming months here, and make him a guy who's going to retire as a Brown and go straight into Canton. Well, from Myles Garrett's perspective, this is not about money. There's some of these, standoffs. I think of Brandon Ayuk last summer where they're going back and forth on the contract. They were not on the same page. And so you had a trade request and he's in the building, he's out of the building, all this stuff. Myles Garrett, this is not a contractual ploy. The Browns stand ready to redo the deal. This is a guy who's 29 years old, just turned 29 in December. He's got a lot of years left. That's a position where you can play well into your mid-30s. But he also knows time is running short to go and try to win a championship. So Myles Garrett truly wants to continue his career someplace else. By making this public now, this has kind of, created some level of pressure on the Browns. The Browns continue to say that their stance has not changed here. This could be a situation, Rich, that we're still talking about certainly beyond the start of free agency, potentially up to and even beyond the draft here. Those are the natural checkpoints, particularly the draft, because if you're going to do a Myles Garrett trade, which again, the Browns as of now do not want to do, if you're going to do one, you would like to think that happens prior to the draft, because otherwise you're trading picks out into future drafts as opposed to in 2025. Those picks become devalued here. Myles Garrett, if he were traded, would command one of the biggest compensation packages that we've ever seen in an NFL trade. But again, that's not the mentality right now for the Browns. They still want Myles Garrett to be part of the team. They have him under contract for 2 more years. I think it's going to be a while, Rich. These things can happen quickly, but I would say it's probably going to be a while until we know exactly how this resolves itself.
So, a couple follow-ups then. You mentioned the market would be robust. Name me the teams that you think would jump in. on this, Tom?
All 31. I mean, I think that basically every team in the league would have to inquire about Myles Garrett, just because you're talking about a 29-year-old all-pro pass rusher, reigning defensive player of the year, who is still very much in his prime. You can't, this isn't the NBA. I'm watching all the action over there. You can't trade like your first round pick 10 years from now. In the NFL, you can only go out 3 years. So is it 3 first-round picks? Is it 2 first-round picks and something else? It would be a significant value because you would have such a competition in terms of driving the compensation. A lot of times too, Rich, when a team says we're not trading the guy as opposed to the flip side of it, and I'm sure we'll get to Cooper Kupp, where it's very apparent they're going to trade him. That can impact, leverage in terms of the trades here. The Browns are starting from a standpoint of we are absolutely not going to move this guy. I do believe that there would be a ton of teams. I mean, name a team. That team is probably interested in Myles Garrett. Now, who has the flexibility? How are they constructed? Some of those things would end up being the questions here. But I would fairly say, Rich, almost every team in the league at least would be open to making a move if and when the Browns would be willing to do it.
Well, not every team in the league, not all the other 31 are in line to win a Super Bowl or appear to be in line to win a Super Bowl, and that obviously would have to play into it. And I guess the question would also be if the Browns say, we can go through this year's draft without making this deal, we can wait till training camp, we could do that sort of stuff, would be how they view this year's draft. If it's deep enough for them to say, let's take a ton of capital now, as opposed to potentially put it all together in another draft that has a deeper quarterback pool within it. And that's my next question is how do you know what's your sense of how the Browns view this draft? Second overall, there are 2 quarterbacks that are considered first round top of the draft worthy. The Titans are sitting there at 1 right in front of Cleveland. How do the Browns view this draft?
I would say, generally speaking, Rich, there could be a couple quarterbacks that go very high in this draft. But you and I have been talking about this for weeks here, and it was reinforced by conversations I had at the Senior Bowl. I don't know how many teams have grades on Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders that would truly make them top 5 type of talents here. Could they go top 5? Absolutely, because that position tends to be valued at a higher level. In terms of the actual grades, this isn't a quarterback class where you have slam dunk guys that you take up at the top. Now, it's entirely possible because we are very early in the process. Cam Ward did not go to an all-star game. He was invited to the Senior Bowl, decided not to go. Shedeur Sanders went to East-West, didn't really do anything, but at least met with the teams there. Those would be the 2 guys that potentially you're talking about taken up at the top of the draft. The Browns, like the other teams, are going to have to make evaluations whether or not they think that value is there. I would also say, if you're talking about where the Browns stand right now, trading Myles Garrett, that's the type of deal. I mean, it's the flip side of the Deshaun Watson deal. Look at how the Deshaun Watson trade has impacted the Houston Texans. All the additional picks. So they had the freedom in one draft to take the quarterback in C.J. Stroud and the pass rusher in Will Anderson. The Browns gave up all those first-round picks. What if they can get 2 or 3 first-round picks back and use that to rebuild their roster? I can't say it strongly enough. The Browns are not looking at it from that perspective, but knowing Andrew Berry and how he thinks about these things, you're never going to want actively to take higher picks in future drafts because those are just by nature devalued. The way that most NFL teams look at it as would be a first-round pick in 2026 is really more like a second-round pick this year and vice versa. So you're wanting to get all the draft capital that you can now because then you can also flip those and get additional picks in future years. There's a lot of moving parts to making a trade like this. But we've seen wilder stuff than this happen. How does Myles Garrett approach this? How ugly does he want to make it? How much pressure does he want to try to put on the team? How much, are the Browns willing to really dig in their heels on this? That all remains to be seen because even though these discussions have been going on for weeks, it burst into the open yesterday, and that just creates a little different conversation.
Tom Pelissero, co-host of The Insiders on NFL Network, NFL Plus, our buddy, regular here on the Rich Eisen Show, zooming in from the Media Center in New Orleans at the Super Bowl. The Cooper Kupp announcement yesterday, he pops it out there on social media that he was informed by the team that they're going to be seeking to trade him, and they're going to work with him and his family to find the right place to continue competing for championships. I don't agree with the decision and always believed it was going to begin and end in L.A. So the question is, why? Tom, what's up?
Well, let's start by going back to last October when the Rams were actively engaged in Cooper Kupp trade discussions, among other players. They're off to a 1-4 start. They were exploring what their options were with Cooper Kupp. Ultimately, for one reason or another, they decided not to pull the trigger on a trade. But they had serious offers. They had good value on the table. They decided not to do it. Now Cooper Kupp is a year older. He's 31 years old. I know that he had that monster season back in 2021, but each of the last 3 years, he's missed significant time because of injuries, and his production has suffered significantly. I mean, you look down the stretch of last season, there were games where he had no catches or one catch. He had 700-something yards once again. This is not a guy who's performing anywhere close to the level that he was when he had close to 2,000 yards. Still a valuable piece, and I believe that there will be a market. Cooper Kupp will be playing football in the NFL in 2025, but it'll be really interesting to see how the Rams navigate this situation and how much money, if any, they may have to pay as part of Cooper Kupp's salary, or if he has to take a pay cut to facilitate a trade. And in turn, is he willing to do that, as opposed to, if you can't work out a trade where I get my full $20 million, I'm just going to say, cut me, and, I'll move on and sign someplace else for, whether it's the minimum or whether it's something more than what he's due. He's got a $7.5 million roster bonus due on the third day of the league year in March, which is like March 18th. $5 million of that is fully guaranteed. So the Rams are committed to Cooper Kupp for at least $5 million. And if he's still on the roster after that date in March, then they're in for $7.5 million. It's possible that if they're willing to pay that entire roster bonus, that actually generates more value for Cooper Kupp in a trade, because then all of a sudden you're getting Cooper Kupp around what he'd probably get on the free agent market, which is, okay, it's a 1-year deal for $12.5 million. He's doing another like $20 million in 2026, but that's non-guaranteed. Part of that's in a roster bonus as well. That could be a little bit more palatable. I've talked to some of the teams today that were in the Cooper Kupp trade discussions a year ago who have said, we're not trading for him this time, because basically they think this is probably a situation where the Rams might end up having to cut him. It's entirely possible they could trade him. The Rams have been creative through the years with veteran players and being able to trade those guys somewhere down the line. I would fully anticipate that they'll explore every avenue for that. But keep in mind, that third day of the league year, that's where the rubber's going to meet the road. And if Cooper Kupp hasn't been traded by that point, they're either going to have to eat another $2.5 million or they're going to release.
I have JJ McCarthy on in a half an hour. What do I need to know? What do you think? What's going on there?
It's a fluid conversation right now for the Vikings based on the conversations that I've had. I would fairly say all options are still on the table with Sam Darnold. I do think that the way the season finished and the fact that the last 2 games did not match up to what they'd seen from Sam Darnold the first 16 games, in a way it might make it easier for the Vikings to potentially do a multi-year deal with Sam Darnold, because the number, you might have a better chance of getting that done closer to the franchise tag number, which is around $40 million. With JJ McCarthy, that is a young player the Vikings think really highly of. And they said it right after he suffered the meniscus injury that led to the surgery that cost him his entire rookie year. They believe in him. He's going to be their franchise quarterback eventually. But there's really no precedent for a rookie quarterback, much less a first-round pick, to miss his entire rookie season, the entire year of reps because of an injury, and then come back and start in week 1 in year 2. Could it happen? Definitely. But I believe that the Vikings have to have some type of a fallback plan, whether that's bringing back Sam Darnold, whether that is re-signing Daniel Jones, which would, in all likelihood, almost certainly be a lesser financial commitment than bringing back Sam Darnold. They're in a really unique spot because you remember, this is a team that won 14 games this year. Sam Darnold's being hoisted on the guy's shoulders in the locker room after that win over Green Bay in Week 17 that sets up the NFC North title game in Detroit. Did not play well in Week 18. They did not play well as a team in the wild card playoff game against the Rams. So what is that number on Sam Darnold? A big part of this is going to be figuring out what's the market out there, for Sam Darnold if he were to hit free agency. And I'm sure that his agents, RJ Gonser and Jimmy Sexton, will have a very good idea of what someone might be willing to pay him. It only takes one team. Last year, the Vikings, it was a different situation, but they were going through a very similar calculus with Kirk Cousins, where it was, all right, we'll pay you right up to here. But at some point, there's a number we're not going to go past because we're not going to be able to put a competitive team around you. It only took one team. There was one bidder for Kirk Cousins. That was the Atlanta Falcons. They paid Kirk Cousins significantly more than what the Vikings were willing to offer, and they let Kirk Cousins go. The biggest difference here, besides the fact that Sam Darnold is a younger player, is the fact that they can use the franchise tag. It's around $40 million. That could lead to Sam Darnold eventually signing a multi-year deal, although that would set the baseline for a multi-year deal, maybe at a higher number the Vikings want to go to. He could play on the tag for a year, or potentially there could be a tag and trade. That's what I mean by all options are on the table. They're still feeling this out. The Vikings are continuing to meet. They're in the early process in terms of their draft evaluations, in terms of potential discussions with other teams. We're not down the road on it just yet, Rich. But in terms of JJ McCarthy here, the primary questions I'd have for him are just how confident are you that you could go out there and play in week 1 in 2025? Because, the Vikings have a high degree of confidence in him being the guy eventually here. But week 1, with all those missed reps, is that setting him up for success? That's a question they got to ask themselves.
Tom, before I let you go, I know there's usually very little you learn from media night, but you were sitting there listening to everything come in from every podium and everything out there. The thing that jumped out at me is somebody asked a question of Travis Kelce about his future and did it in a way that they got an answer and say, where do you see yourself 3 years from now? And he said, so I hope still playing football. Did that surprise you, hearing that?
That was the number one quote. I caught up with it. The main thing I learned out of media night, Rich, is there's a lot of reporters from Germany at the Super Bowl, because I did a lot of interviews that are going to be airing somewhere. Not quite sure where.
Nice.
I did a lot of interviews with German TV stations last night. But as I was reviewing the quotes today, that's, I think, the most definitively that we've heard Travis Kelce talk about his future. And he's a guy who, in following Patrick Mahomes' lead, has done deals that have been team-friendly with regard to the structure and the cash flow. Patrick Mahomes, if you look at the cash flow on his deal, ultimately, he signed that 10-year extension. The way that they've done it with the rolling guarantees and everything, and the way they've moved money up at times, he's been as highly paid as anybody in the league. Travis Kelce, you can certainly argue, has done the same thing for the tight end position, where he could have pushed this and been like, I want to be the first $20 million tight end. He hasn't done that. Every year, though, with a contract like that, you're reevaluating it. I would anticipate that continues to be the case with Travis Kelce. We've seen him go through the regular season in the last couple of years. I don't want to say that he's not going 100%, but he is pacing himself. You can see it. He is saving that energy because he knows we're going to get into the playoffs. We're going to be able to do damage come January and February. I'm going to turn it on. And there's not been a better player in the postseason the last couple of years, particularly relative to his regular season production, than Travis Kelce. As long as he wants to go, he's on that short list along with Mahomes, Chris Jones, Andy Reid, and Steve Spagnuolo. That's been the 5 guys who have been the core of this entire Super Bowl run here. And as long as they can continue to push it and continue to be competitive every year, Travis Kelce, I know he's got a lot of other stuff going on in his life, but you can tell when it gets to playoff football, he's loving every second of it. And so it's interesting to hear, definitely, that, he's starting to push. If he's playing 3-4 more years, you're pushing 40 years old. Not a lot of tight ends have been able to do that here, but, certainly the Chiefs will want Travis Kelce around as long as he's willing to go.
Tom, you're the man. You're the man.
See you in person.
We'll see you in person soon. Put on some socks.
I got them. I don't know if I can get them out there. There you go.
Don't pull a hammy now, Tom. Don't pull a hammy.
No cankles.
I just did. That's going to
Hydrate, Tom. Hydrate, Tom. It is New Orleans. Thanks again. That's Tom Pelissero, everybody, right here. My buddy from NFL Network. Awesome stuff, as always. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.